The memorial wreath struck the floor before the Duke of Brantham had finished speaking his sister's name. Rosemary scattered across the polished boards. White heather caught beneath the brass-rimmed wheel of the raised platform, and the rare black ribbon tightened, once before tearing with a soft final sound. For one suspended moment, no one moved. June light poured through the glass roof of the pavilion and lay across mourning silks, silver trays, black coats, and the pale marble likeness of Lady Amabel Halewick. More than 2 years had passed since Amabel's death, yet grief still ruled Marlowe Chase as surely as rank ruled every guest gathered beneath its roof. Felicity Eldridge stood nearest the wreckage. Her work basket had overturned beside her. Thread cards, a pencil, and her father's ebony sample shuttle had spilled across the boards. The arrangement was so complete that accusation required almost no courage. "How dreadful," Lady Eugenia Kinnerton said. Her voice was soft enough to sound restrained and clear enough to reach the far end of the pavilion. Miss Eldridge was standing beside it. A murmur moved through the guests. Felicity heard her name pass from one mouth to another, altered by pity, suspicion, and private satisfaction. Someone behind her whispered that she had wanted her name placed beside Amabel's on the memorial program. Another voice answered that disappointment often made a woman careless. Felicity did not defend herself. She looked at the black ribbon beneath the wheel. She had woven it in March 1862 during the first Seven-Willow trial, before Amabel's heart had weakened beyond concealment, and before society had learned to speak of the design as though a titled woman had created every thread alone. 7 silver-grey willows bent through the black ground. At the 16th repeat, one pale crossing lay at the wrong level. A small, mechanical error Felicity had corrected in every later draft. The flaw had made the ribbon useless for trade and precious to her. Now half of it lay crushed beneath broken greenery. The other half remained caught near the platform. Her first thought was not of reputation. It was of the ebony shuttle. She saw it beneath a spray of white heather and bent to retrieve it. No. The Duke reached her before anyone else understood the danger. His bare fingers closed around the back of her gloved hand and stopped it an inch above a jagged sliver of brass. "Don't touch the fitting. The edge is split." Felicity looked down. The broken metal shone beside her ring finger. Had she reached farther, it would have cut through the glove. Anthony Halewick released her immediately. His touch had been firm only for the instant required, yet warmth remained across her hand after his fingers were gone. "Thank you," she said. He had already turned toward the damaged platform. "No one is to move anything." The command crossed the pavilion without effort. Footmen froze. Guests who had begun edging closer stepped back. Lady Eugenia snapped shut the ivory fan she carried. The small sound drew Anthony's attention. Silver willows had been painted across the fan's pale guards. A narrow black loop hung from its brass hinge. Near the hinge, caught against the metal, lay a fresh black filament. Anthony's expression changed so little that only Felicity, watching him closely, noticed. "Lady Eugenia," he said, "place your fan on the table." Eugenia lifted her chin. "My fan? On the table. Surely you don't imagine that it caused this spectacle." "I haven't said what I imagine." His voice remained level. "Set it down." For the first time, uncertainty touched Eugenia's composure. She crossed to a side table and laid the fan beside a vase of white lilies. The black loop fell against the polished wood. Randolph Kinnerton stepped closer to his sister. He was handsome in the narrow, controlled manner of a man accustomed to measuring rooms before entering them. Your Grace, this is becoming unnecessary. Anthony did not look at him. Find Mr. Doran, he told a footman. Ask the pavilion steward to remain. Lady Markham will also stay as witness. Lady Markham, a married guest of unimpeachable position, inclined her head. No one objected after that. Mr. Caleb Doran arrived within minutes, carrying clean paper, sealing wax, and a leather case. He was a narrow-faced solicitor of 48, whose calm seemed designed for rooms where everyone else preferred conclusions. He first recorded the position of the wheel, the torn ribbon, the fallen basket, the fan, and every person standing within several yards. Only then did he allow Felicity to recover the ebony shuttle. She lifted it by one end and returned it to her work-basket. It never left her possession. Lady Edith, the Dowager Duchess, remained seated near the memorial loom. Her face had gone pale, but she said nothing. Mr. Doran knelt beside the wreath. The greenery can't be restored without disturbing the ribbon. Then it won't be restored, Anthony said. Record the rosemary and heather separately after their positions are marked. Preserve the ribbon exactly as it is. A servant brought a folded cloth. Anthony stopped him. Unused paper first. Mr. Doran provided it. Under the eyes of the steward and Lady Markham, Anthony lifted the torn black ribbon by its edge and laid it upon the clean sheet. He did not put it in his pocket or carry it away. Mr. Doran recorded the transfer. Eugenia gave a faint laugh. This is absurd. My fan may have brushed the wreath when everyone crowded the platform. That proves nothing. Felicity looked at her. It may prove contact. You admit it then. I admit only what the fibers may support. Randolph's mouth tightened. Miss Eldridge, you're hardly in a position to instruct anyone about evidence. Anthony turned his head. She is in precisely that position, if she understands the cloth better than the rest of us. Randolph's expression hardened, though his smile remained. Mr. Doran opened the ivory fan on the table without lifting it. Several black fibers lay inside the hinge, newly frayed. The wrist loop was made from figured silk rather than ordinary narrow braid. It had been folded lengthwise, doubled, and stitched so the pattern showed on both sides. 7 silver-grey willows bent across the black surface. Felicity felt the room recede. Near the concealed base of the loop, the 16th repeat carried the same pale crossing as her torn ribbon. May I see them side by side? She asked. Mr. Doran looked toward Anthony, then corrected himself and looked back to her. Without contact? Yes, he placed the fan and torn ribbon parallel upon separate sheets. The patterns aligned. So did the mistake. Anthony leaned closer, careful not to cast his shadow over the silk. The same crossing, he said. Yes. Felicity kept her voice steady. It occurred in the first trial only. Eugenia's face remained composed. Black mourning ribbon is hardly unique. This pattern may be. You would say that. I would say an independent weaver should examine it. Felicity pointed without touching. The pale crossing is not part of the intended design. The loom stopped at the 16th repeat. The shuttle moved before the correct shed had formed. I repaired the working sequence afterward. Mr. Doran asked, how many finished lengths came from that first trial? 2, 1 yard each. Who possessed them? Lady Amabel kept one. She gave the other to me. Felicity looked at the crushed wreath. This is mine. Anthony's gaze sharpened. And the second? It should have remained with your sister. Silence settled over the pavilion with greater force than the earlier whispers. Eugenia opened her hands. I bought the loop in Bond Street. If some trimmer used discarded ribbon, I can't be expected to know its history. Which shop? Mr. Doran asked. I don't recall. When was it fitted? 2 years ago, perhaps longer, who arranged the work. A maid who has since left me. Randolph moved forward. This is a memorial gathering, not a trade tribunal. No, Felicity said. A tribunal would require records. Several guests turned away, embarrassed by the precision of her answer. One gentleman near the door muttered that the matter should be ended before Amabel's memory suffered further indignity. Anthony faced him. My sister's memory isn't protected by deciding facts before they're secured. The gentleman bowed and said nothing more. Mr. Doran used fine tweezers to remove the loose fibers from the fan hinge. He placed them in a labeled envelope. The torn ribbon went into a separate protective fold. The fan was wrapped without detaching the loop. Each covering received the date, the witness's initials, and a description of its contents. A written receipt will be provided to Lady Eugenia, Mr. Doran said. The fan remains attached to the loop and will be returned when the examination is complete, unless another lawful claim intervenes. Eugenia's eyes flashed. You speak as though I've stolen something. Felicity met her gaze. No one has proved that, but you believe it. Belief isn't testimony. Mr. Doran turned to Felicity. State your conclusions as narrowly as you can. She looked first at the sealed fan, then at the torn ribbon that could never again form part of an unbroken wreath. The fan caught the wreath today. The fresh fibers support that. The wrist loop appears to carry the same Seven-Willow first trial error as my ribbon. I can't yet say who removed Lady Amabel's length, who ordered the loop, or whether Lady Eugenia knew its origin. Anthony watched her through the stillness that followed. She had been given every reason to accuse and had refused to claim more than she could prove. Eugenia drew a breath. Then Miss Eldridge should apologize for turning an accident into scandal. She will not, Anthony said. His voice was quiet, but no one mistook it for uncertainty. No one saw her cause the fall. No one has established that she touched the wreath before it moved. She won't apologize for a conclusion society reached because it found her convenient to blame. Felicity felt every gaze shift from her to him. He had not declared her innocent by ducal authority. He had done something rarer. He had refused to let power decide before truth had spoken. By the time the last carriage left the gravel sweep, the rosemary and white heather had been gathered into separate baskets. The platform wheel had been marked where it stood, and the pavilion had fallen into the strained quiet that follows a scandal no one has yet decided how to repeat. The wreath had not been rebuilt. Its black ribbon, torn and creased, remained sealed apart from the ivory fan and the loose fibers taken from the hinge. Mr. Caleb Doran locked all 3 packets inside his leather case and kept the key upon his person. Felicity watched him carry it into the small workroom adjoining the pavilion before she allowed Nell to brush dust from the hem of her gown. "Your hand," Nell murmured. "Let me see it." Felicity opened her gloved fingers. The split brass had not touched her. Only a faint pressure mark crossed the back of the glove where Anthony had stopped her. It's unharmed, because his grace saw the danger. Felicity closed her hand around the ebony shuttle she had recovered from beneath the heather. He saw a sharp edge, nothing more. Yet the speed of his attention remained with her when she entered the workroom. Anthony stood beside the cold fireplace. Lady Edith occupied the chair nearest the window, pale but composed. Mr. Doran had arranged fresh paper and ink upon the central table. The locked evidence case rested beside him. Nell remained at the open doorway, where Felicity had asked her to stay. No one directed Felicity to a chair. She selected the one opposite Anthony and placed the ebony shuttle beside her work-basket. His gaze settled upon its 7 worn notches. That belonged to your father. Yes. Elias Eldridge was a silk-patterned draftsman in Spitalfields, and the marks, counting cuts, he made the first 5. I made the last 2 after his sight began to fail. Lady Edith looked toward the dark wood. Amabel once told me your father could detect a faulty sequence by touch, often before another man saw it. Felicity rested 2 fingers beside the shuttle. He taught me to count repeats when I was still young enough to believe ability would matter more than the name written beneath the pattern. Mr. Doran dipped his pen. When did Lady Amabel retain you? January 1862. She wanted a mourning ribbon without urns, lilies, veiled figures, or broken columns. She drew 7 willow trees bending toward one another. She chose the black ground and the silver-gray thread. Anthony asked, "What portion of the design was yours?" The repeat structure. The transition between the 7th willow and the 1st. The selvage return. The working draft from which the loom cards were cut. Could my sister have woven it without you? She could have drawn the idea. She could not have made that idea repeat through narrow silk without someone translating it into mechanism. He accepted the answer, without defending Amabel. Could you have created the same ribbon without her? Not that ribbon. The 7 willows were hers. The palette was hers. The meaning was hers. The structure that allowed them to exist in cloth was mine. Mr. Doran wrote for several moments. What credit was intended? Joint credit. Was that recorded? In working notes, a cost sheet, and a memorandum kept with Lady Amabel's materials. I have not seen any of them since her death. Anthony's expression tightened. Because I refused you access to the room. Yes, he did not look away. I believed you intended to profit from Amabel's name. I intended to prevent mine from disappearing. Lady Edith lowered her eyes. Felicity continued, before regret could soften the fact into something harmless. Within a fortnight of Lady Amabel's death, Lady Eugenia told merchants that the 7-willow ribbon had belonged entirely to Amabel and that I had merely copied sketches. 1 commission was withdrawn. A second merchant declined even to examine my work. Anthony's voice was low. What reason did he give? Felicity remembered the thin cream paper and the elegant hand that had made hunger sound respectable. He wrote that a dispute with a dead lady of rank made me commercially inconvenient. The room became very still. By autumn, I could no longer afford the workroom my father and I had shared. I sold 37 folios from his pattern library. Her voice remained even, though she could still see the dealer pulling the first volume from the shelf. It had contained botanical borders in Elias Eldridge's careful hand. She had asked what it would cost to buy that one back. The sum had been more than she possessed. The dealer separated them by subject before reselling them. Birds to one buyer, ecclesiastical borders to another, botanical designs to a third. I asked him to keep the collection together. He said sentiment did not raise the price. Lady Edith pressed her handkerchief between her fingers. Felicity, I didn't know. That is part of the difficulty, Your Grace. Erasure rarely enters a drawing room carrying its account book. Felicity looked from her to Anthony. It takes wages, it takes rent. It closes a workroom. Then respectable people call the result unfortunate, as though no one made it happen. Anthony's face had gone still. My refusal helped make it happen. Yes, the word was not cruel. It was exact. Mr. Doran turned to a fresh sheet. We must establish the number and nature of the surviving textile pieces. How many came from the first trial? 2 finished lengths of 1 yard each. Lady Amabel kept one. She gave the other to me. Felicity indicated the locked case. Mine became the wreath ribbon. Were there other samples? A short loom header working swatch and a small dyer's clipping. Neither was a 1-yard prototype. The swatch showed the first completed section. The clipping recorded the color behavior. Where were they kept? The loom header with the working cards, I believe. The dyer's clipping may still be in the Spitalfields sample book. Anthony leaned slightly forward. Then the missing finished length is Amabel's. Yes. Mr. Doran unlocked the outer case, but did not break any of the evidence seals. Through the protective wrapping, he aligned an ivory rule beside the fan loop. The visible loop is much shorter than 1 yard. Because the silk is folded lengthwise, doubled back, passed through a flat knot, and stitched with the tails concealed, Felicity said. An experienced trimmer may be able to estimate the original length without removing the stitches. Would a shop record customer-supplied silk? If it was valuable broad ribbon, almost certainly. The labor would be entered separately from the material. Anthony looked at the sealed fan. Whoever ordered the loop possessed Amabel's missing length. Or received it from someone who did, Felicity corrected. We don't yet know which. A faint change entered his expression. Not offense, recognition. You refuse every conclusion that runs ahead of the evidence. I have spent 2 years learning what happens when others do not. He took the rebuke without resistance. Remain at Marlowe Chase while the records are examined. Felicity answered at once. No. Lady Edith lifted her head. Mr. Doran's pen paused. Anthony's voice stayed controlled. You intend to leave before the inquiry begins. I intend not to remain as a dependent guest whose access can be withdrawn when her findings become uncomfortable. You believe I would repeat that? You already did it. Once. The words landed between them. Anthony stood silent for a moment, then asked, what would make your position independent? Felicity had spent 2 years imagining the day Amabel's room might be opened. She had also spent those years learning that permission from a powerful man could become another form of ownership. A paid commission, she said, in writing, authority to inspect textile inventories, transport records, work orders, correspondence relating to the exhibition, and Lady Amabel's workroom. Mr. Doran will witness every important transfer. My report will remain complete even if it damages House Hailwick. Agreed. My fee is payment for professional labor, not charity. Agreed. Nell remains with me. I choose when I speak before guests, merchants, or committee members. No one presents me as your protégé or as a woman under your protection. Agreed. Felicity studied him. You should hear every term before accepting. Mr. Doran will draft them. You will revise the language. Nothing takes effect until you sign. His gaze moved from the shuttle to her face. I denied you access when the evidence was nearest and the harm easiest to prevent. I cannot undo that refusal. I can make certain you do not depend upon my goodwill now. Felicity felt the difference between reassurance and structure. It was not trust. It was not forgiveness. It was the first condition under which either might someday become possible. Then the commission may proceed, she said. Mr. Doran resumed writing. At the bottom of the first page, he entered the question that would guide the next stage of the inquiry. Who had delivered 1 yard of black Seven-Willow prototype silk to a Bond Street trimmer, and under whose account had it been transformed into Lady Eugenia Kinnerton's fan loop? The formal examination began the following morning in the estate study, where the shutters had been opened wide to admit a steady northern light. Mr. Caleb Doran placed the locked evidence case upon the central table, and read aloud the custody record. The torn black ribbon, the ivory fan, and the loose hinge fibers remained sealed in separate wrappings. Anthony stood near the cold fireplace with Lady Edith beside him. Felicity sat opposite the ebony shuttle beside her work basket. Nell remained at the open door. The final witness was Mrs. Vale, an independent Bond Street trimmer whose plain black gown and measuring eye suggested a woman unimpressed by rank. "You understand that the loop must remain attached," Mr. Doran said. "I do," Mrs. Vale replied. "I'll examine it in place." After every seal had been confirmed, Mr. Doran opened the fan wrapping and lifted the ivory fan onto clean linen without touching the black loop. Silver willows curved across its pale guards. Mrs. Vale studied the loop, then used a narrow ivory pick to raise one folded edge without disturbing the stitches. "This wasn't sold as ready-made wrist braid," she said. Anthony asked, "How can you tell?" "The width, the turn beneath the seam. The figured face appears on both sides." She pointed with the pick. Broad ribbon was folded lengthwise, doubled back, stitched flat, and passed through a decorative knot. The short tails are hidden beneath. Mr. Doran consulted the measurement from the previous afternoon. Could it contain nearly 1 yard? It could. I wouldn't name an exact measure without undoing the stitches, but 35 or 36 inches wouldn't surprise me. "Would a shop record customer supplied ribbon?" Felicity asked. "If it was valuable figured silk, yes. The labor would be entered separately, especially for a titled account." "Could the shop have supplied the ribbon?" "Not as ordinary fan braid. No sensible trimmer would fold costly broad silk unless the customer specifically wanted that cloth used." Mr. Doran wrote, "Is the finishing method distinctive? The knot is common. These crossed holding stitches are less so. I can name several Bond Street rooms that used them in 1862. Anthony glanced toward Mr. Doran. "Trace everyone that held a Kinnerton account." "I have already begun, Your Grace." Mrs. Vale sat back. "Whatever else this loop may prove, it was made from broad ribbon supplied to the trimmer. It wasn't purchased as finished cord." Mr. Doran then opened the separate wrapping containing the torn wreath ribbon. Its edge remained ragged where it had been pulled and crushed. Mr. Doran opened the hinge fiber packet under witness and tipped the strands beneath a lens. Mrs. Vale compared them with the torn ribbon. "The twist and finish are consistent." "That means the fan caught the wreath yesterday," Felicity said. "It doesn't prove who intended the contact." Mr. Doran positioned the fan loop and torn ribbon beneath separate lenses, leaving clean paper between them so they could not touch. 7 silver-grey trees bent through the black ground. At the 16th repeat, one pale thread crossed above the darker weft instead of below it. The same interruption appeared on both pieces. Anthony stepped to the opposite side of the table, careful not to cast his shadow over the silk. "This is the error you saw in the pavilion." "Yes. Explain it." Felicity adjusted the lens. During the first trial in early March 1862, the loom stopped at the 16th repeat. One card had not advanced cleanly. I restarted the shuttle before the proper shed had fully formed. Mrs. Vale nodded. Then one thread crossed at the wrong level. Exactly. The mistake appeared in the cloth, not in the intended draft. I corrected the working sequence before any later weaving. Anthony asked, "Would ribbon woven from the corrected cards contain it?" "No." "Could another draftsman reproduce it?" "Only by copying the first trial cloth and treating every visible crossing as deliberate." Felicity indicated the pale interruption on the loop. A person working from my corrected draft would never place that thread there. A copyist counting from the prototype might. The loop preserved an accident that should have existed only in the earliest cloth. Mrs. Vale studied it again. The loop maker didn't create this pattern. Whoever brought the strip to the trimming room already possessed the woven prototype. Mr. Doran asked, "Can you determine whether it came from Miss Eldridge's length or Lady Amabel's missing one?" "Not from construction alone," Felicity replied. "My finished length remained with me until yesterday. If that custody is established, the loop must derive from the other 1 yard length or from a direct copy made before the correction." "And the working swatch?" Anthony asked. "Too short to supply the loop." "The dyer's clipping?" "Smaller still." Felicity lifted one corner of the torn ribbon with 2 gloved fingers so Anthony could see the pale crossing more clearly. At the same moment, he reached for the opposite edge. Their fingertips met beneath the lens. The contact was slight, yet neither withdrew at once. Anthony's eyes lifted from the silk to her face. He did not close his hand over hers. He waited. Felicity completed the transfer deliberately, placing the ribbon edge into his fingers before drawing her hand back. "The crossing aligns exactly," he said, his voice lower than before. "Yes." He returned the ribbon immediately to Mr. Doran. The study door opened. Lady Eugenia entered with a married cousin as companion. Randolph followed them. Eugenia wore pearl-grey silk and an expression prepared for insult. "I am told my private property has been dismantled before tradespeople." "Nothing has been dismantled," Anthony said. "The loop remains attached." Eugenia looked at the fan. "And what discovery has justified this intrusion?" "The loop was folded from customer-supplied broad ribbon," Mrs. Vale said. "It was not purchased as ready-made braid." "Then the shop altered ribbon I bought." "Which shop?" Mr. Doran asked. "I don't remember." "Who arranged the work?" "A maid who has since left." "Her name?" Eugenia's gaze cooled. "I don't recall." Randolph stepped forward. "This proves only that a fashionable trimming room used fashionable black silk." Felicity turned one lens so the witnesses could see the pale crossing. "It proves the loop carries an accidental error from the first Seven-Willow trial cloth. The error was removed from every corrected draft." Eugenia looked toward the silk. For one instant, uncertainty disturbed her composure. "You are the only person calling it an error." "No. Mrs. Vale can confirm the construction. Mr. Doran can preserve the samples. Any competent master weaver can inspect the thread path." "Convenient. For the truth, yes." Randolph gave a short laugh. "You expect merchants to prefer the word of a working draftswoman over Lady Amabel's family." Anthony's expression hardened. "The inquiry isn't asking anyone to prefer a person. It is asking cloth, records, and witnesses to agree." Mr. Doran resealed the fan-torn ribbon and hinge fibers separately. The loop remained attached. Each witness signed the custody entry. He then brought forward Lady Amabel's textile inventory. Near the final leaf, one line halted Felicity's breath. Mr. Doran read it aloud. "Seven-Willows, joint working cards, compartment 7. Anthony looked at Felicity. "Where is compartment 7? "In Lady Amabel's cedar sample press." "And the cards?" "They should have been stored there." Randolph moved too quickly. The room was cleared after her death. Lady Edith raised her head. It was not cleared. Her voice was quiet, but memory gave it authority. Access was restricted. The press was packed for the exhibition and later returned. Nothing was dispersed. Randolph's eyes shifted toward Eugenia before he looked away. Anthony saw it. So did Felicity. Mr. Doran closed the inventory. Then The room should be examined under witness. Anthony's gaze remained on Randolph. Tomorrow morning, we open it. Felicity looked at the sealed fan and the inventory entry naming joint working cards. The ribbon had shown that someone possessed Amabel's missing prototype. The cedar press might now reveal who had expected that possession never to be questioned. On the morning of June 16, the key to Lady Amabel's textile room was brought from the estate strongbox beneath the eyes of Mr. Caleb Doran, the Dowager Duchess, Felicity, Anthony, Nell, Mrs. Pruett, and Mr. Harbury, the steward who had supervised the packing of the cedar sample press 2 years earlier. Before the lock was touched, Anthony stopped beside the door. "One fact must be stated correctly," he said. "This room wasn't untouched after my sister died. It was closed to Miss Eldridge, to visitors, and to members of the household without assigned duties. Mrs. Pruett entered to prepare personal effects. Hester Knoll entered to arrange the textile materials. Mr. Harbury supervised the press when it left and returned. I did not inspect the room myself." Felicity heard the admission without gratitude. Accuracy was not generosity, though it was more than she had received from him in 1862. Mr. Doran asked each witness to confirm or correct the account. Mrs. Pruett remembered wrapping Amabel's drawing books and covering the loom. Mr. Harbury confirmed that 2 footmen had carried the cedar press downstairs under his direction. Neither claimed to have opened its internal compartments. "When was the room fully sealed?" Felicity asked. Mr. Harbury considered. "After the press came back from London, miss, not before." Anthony looked at the door as though the distinction had altered its weight. "Then open it." The key turned reluctantly. Dust stirred from the lower panel, but the room beyond was not ruined or abandoned. A narrow loom stood beneath the eastern windows. Skeins of black, pearl grey, and silver silk remained in covered trays. The cedar sample press occupied the wall opposite, its brass corners dulled by time. Felicity entered without haste. 2 years earlier, Anthony had denied her even the threshold. Now every step she took belonged to a written commission that permitted her to record what House Halewick might prefer forgotten. Mr. Doran began with the door, shutters, and visible cabinets. Felicity examined the press. Its upper compartments were marked by small ivory numerals. 7 stood at shoulder height. The door opened without resistance. Inside lay a faded blue lining and nothing else. "The cards were here," Felicity said. She did not need memory alone. Along the lining ran a rectangular pressure mark, broad enough for a folded chain of stiff loom cards. The corners had left shallow impressions. How long would they need to rest there to leave that shape? Anthony asked. "Weeks, perhaps months, depending upon the weight above them. It proves storage, not the date of removal." Mr. Doran measured the marks. Felicity ran her gloved fingertips along the upper edge without disturbing the lining. The original chain had used square registration notches there. Had the cards remained long enough, the repeated edges might have marked the cloth, but the pressure was too general to preserve individual shapes. "No forced hinge," Mr. Doran said. "No broken lock. The person who emptied it either had ordinary access or opened it while the press was outside this room," Felicity replied. Randolph's certainty from the previous day returned to her. The room was cleared. He had spoken too quickly and with too much confidence. "The transport records," she said. Mr. Harbury opened the estate dispatch ledger upon a side table. The entry for April 4, 1862, listed 1 cedar sample press, 2 covered design cases, and 1 small table loom sent from Marlowe Chase to the Hanover Square rooms for the spring textile exhibition. 4 lines below, a return entry dated April 28 recorded the same press received at the estate. Mr. Harbury's signature appeared beside it. Was the press locked during the journey? Mr. Doran asked. The outer doors were tied and sealed. The steward said, the interior compartments had their own catches. I didn't inspect them. Who took possession in London? An exhibition porter signed the carrier's sheet. The sheet should remain among the Hanover Square accounts. Anthony looked toward Felicity. So the cards may have left this compartment at Marlowe Chase, during transport, at the exhibition, or after the press returned. Yes, we don't yet know when. She examined the compartment again. Near the rear corner, the blue lining had lifted by the width of a fingernail. Beneath it, graphite darkened the cedar. Felicity asked for tweezers and raised the loose edge. A sentence appeared in Amabel's narrow hand. 7 willows, 2 hands, 1 name must never swallow the other. Lady Edith pressed one hand to the base of her throat. Anthony read the words without speaking. Felicity did not permit herself the comfort they offered. This records Lady Amabel's intention, she said. It doesn't tell us whether that intention was carried out, whether the cards remained here or who removed them. Lady Edith turned toward her. Must every tenderness become evidence before you'll accept it? Felicity lowered the lining carefully. No, Your Grace, but tenderness cannot replace evidence when wages, contracts, and reputation were lost. The older woman looked away, chastened rather than angered. Mr. Doran copied the sentence exactly and noted its concealed position. A paper transport label still clung to the press's rear frame. Its ink had faded, but Hanover Square rooms and April 1862 remained legible. Anthony stood beside Felicity as she compared the label with the dispatch ledger. He did not speak for several minutes. I closed this room because I believed preserving it meant preserving Amabel, he said at last. Instead, I preserved my own ignorance. Felicity looked at him. Closing a room can protect objects. It can also protect assumptions. I understand that now. Understanding arrives after the loss. It doesn't reverse it. No. He accepted the answer without asking her to soften it. Mr. Doran turned next to the loom platform. Near the lower crosspiece, 2 small initials had been scratched into the wood, A and F. Felicity remembered making them with the point of a card punch, after Amabel laughed at the solemnity of their first successful repeat. The memory struck so sharply that she stepped back. The narrow platform shifted beneath her shoe. One board had warped upward, where the room's dry air had pulled against an old fastening. Anthony reached out, then stopped before touching her. His hand remained open between them. May I? Felicity looked at his offered hand. He had once assumed the right to close a door against her. Now he waited for permission to help her descend a single unstable step. She placed her gloved hand in his. His fingers closed with measured care. He steadied her until both feet reached the floor, then released her the instant she withdrew. No one commented. The touch had been brief, but unlike the warning beside the broken brass, it had been chosen by both of them. Mr. Doran inspected the warped board and marked it for repair after the examination. Who knew this press better than anyone still living? He asked. Lady Edith answered. Hester Knoll. She kept the workroom for nearly 20 years. Where is she now? Near Winchester, I believe. She left service after Amabel's death and went to her married sister. Mr. Doran wrote the name. I'll send an inquiry through the parish and request forwarding if she has moved. Felicity added, ask whether she saw the contents of compartment 7 before the press left, after it returned, and before the room was sealed. Ask who gave packing instructions. Do not tell her what we found beneath the lining, so her memory isn't shaped by ours, Anthony said. Exactly. He nodded to Mr. Doran. Send it by express. A footman entered before the solicitor had finished drafting the questions. He carried a London newspaper and a sealed commercial notice addressed to the Duke of Brantham. Anthony broke the seal. The Kinnerton Exhibition Committee invited merchants, dressmakers, and titled patrons to the Hanover Square Rooms on June 20 for the public unveiling of the Seven-Willow mourning ribbon. The notice named Lady Eugenia Kinnerton as artistic patron. Felicity Eldridge was not mentioned. Anthony handed her the paper. Beneath the announcement appeared a promise that the pattern would be demonstrated upon a working loom before prospective buyers. Felicity read the date twice. 4 days. If the Kinnertons secured orders before the original cards or records were found, copied silk would enter trade under their name while her challenge still looked personal. We leave for London tomorrow, Anthony said. Felicity folded the notice along its existing crease. We go to Spitalfields first, not to the exhibition committee, not until we know what the workers remember and what the books contain. Noble testimony can be arranged. Working records are harder to persuade. Anthony looked once toward the empty compartment and the concealed graphite sentence. Then we begin with the people who made the ribbon possible. Felicity returned the notice to Mr. Doran for the file. Somewhere between Marlowe Chase and Hanover Square, the original chain had vanished. In 4 days, a second chain would attempt to speak in its place. The train left Hampshire shortly after 8 on June 17, carrying Felicity toward London, with the ebony shuttle wrapped in plain cloth inside her work-basket, and Mr. Caleb Doran's locked evidence case secured beneath his hand. The ivory fan, torn wreath ribbon, and loose hinge fibers had not changed custody. Lady Edith and Nell shared the compartment with Felicity, while Anthony sat opposite beside the solicitor. No one spoke of the hand Felicity had placed in Anthony's on the warped step the previous morning. The memory remained between them without demand. At Waterloo, 2 carriages took the party east. Anthony's equipage could have carried them first to Mayfair, but Felicity had already made the order clear. Spitalfields, she said. The workers and the books come before the committee. Anthony gave the direction, without alteration. Josiah Bell's workshop stood behind a narrow frontage where ribbons hung in the window like dark streams of water. Inside, the air held the dry warmth of silk, paste, paper, and polished wood. Looms sounded through the adjoining room in measured bursts. Mr. Bell, a compact man with silver in his beard, led them to a high table beneath a brass lamp. He bowed to Anthony, then turned first to Felicity. Miss Eldridge, I kept what you told me to keep. He brought out a working book bound in cracked brown leather. The original remained in his hands while Mr. Doran examined the dated pages. February 1862 appeared above Felicity's compressed figures. Beside the Seven-Willow return, she had written a correction to the selvage sequence and signed it with her initials. That is my notation, she said. The 7th trunk was losing 1 thread when the repeat turned. I changed the return before the first full trial. Mr. Bell placed a second book beside it. A small clipping of black silk remained pinned to one page, its silver-grey willows interrupted by the pale crossing at the 16th repeat. The dyer's sample, he said. It has never left this book. Mr. Doran checked the page number, date, pinholes, and Bell's original entry. He requested a certified copy rather than taking the book. Mrs. Arden, the senior loom hand, came from the workroom with chalk dust upon her sleeve. She remembered Felicity standing beside the first loom while Lady Amabel watched from a chair near the window. Lady Amabel knew the look she wanted, Mrs. Arden said. Miss Eldridge knew why the loom wouldn't give it to her. Randolph's name made her glance toward the open door. When the first trial stopped, Miss Eldridge found the faulty advance. She corrected the card sequence and told us where to begin again. Anthony asked, "Did Lady Amabel direct the correction?" "No, Your Grace. She approved the appearance afterward. The mechanism was Miss Eldridge's." Mrs. Arden's plain answer carried more weight than drama could have done. Mr. Doran took her statement in her own words and left each correction visible. Felicity compared the clipping with a sketch of the fan loop's mispick. 3 independent things now agreed: her dated notation, Bell's preserved sample, and Mrs. Arden's memory of the loom. Anthony moved nearer to see the figures and blocked the lamp without realizing it. Felicity shifted the page once. Before she could ask, he looked at the shadow, lifted the brass lamp and placed it to her left. The corrected angle sent clean light across the paper. "You worked with it there at Marlowe Chase," he said. "Yes." That he remembered unsettled her more than a compliment would have done. She lowered her eyes to the page. "Thank you." He stepped back and let the record hold her attention. In the adjoining room, the loom rhythm had slowed. Several workers stood silent near the frames instead of returning to their tasks. Mr. Bell closed the door halfway. "They're afraid," he said. "Mr. Kinnerton supplies orders for narrow mourning silk. If they give statements and he withdraws his account, some won't last the month." Anthony's expression hardened. "I can guarantee their wages." "No," Felicity said. "A personal guarantee from a duke makes every witness appear purchased by a greater title." "Then what do you propose?" "A temporary relief sum lodged with Mr. Doran, placement decisions made by Mr. Bell, and 2 masters who hold neither Hailwick nor Kinnerton accounts. No worker is paid for testimony. Anyone displaced because of the inquiry may apply under the same terms whether the statement assists us or not." Mr. Bell nodded. "That would protect a man who remembers nothing as well as one who does." "It must." Anthony looked at Mr. Doran. "Draft it without my name in the title." "Your Grace will provide the funds?" "Yes, but not the employment decisions." Felicity met his eyes. He had understood the distinction without needing it explained twice. By noon, Doran had also received a commercial report from his London clerk. Randolph Kinnerton carried several heavy notes due before Michaelmas. His expected relief depended upon contracts from the June exhibition and a larger autumn order if the Seven-Willow pattern succeeded. Debt explained pressure. It did not prove theft. The following day, June 18, the merchants' luncheon filled a private room near Hanover Square with silk factors, dressmakers, trimmers, and titled patrons. Lady Eugenia stood beneath a gilt mirror in pearl grey silk, her composure as carefully arranged as the flowers upon the table. Randolph remained near the exhibition chairman. Anthony entered with Felicity on his arm only long enough to satisfy etiquette, then released her before anyone could mistake the gesture for possession. When Mr. Hales asked how she should be announced, Anthony answered where every merchant could hear: Miss Felicity Eldridge, co-designer of the Seven-Willow ribbon, and the draftswoman responsible for its working repeat. A silence followed. Mr. Cresswell, who had once declined to inspect Felicity's portfolio, looked down at his luncheon card. Eugenia smiled. How fortunate that titles may now be corrected after the designer who held them is dead, Felicity answered, before Anthony could. Lady Amabel's contribution is not being removed. Mine is being named. Then perhaps you will demonstrate it. Eugenia turned toward the merchants. The Kinnerton exhibition has promised a working loom on June 20. If Miss Eldridge created the repeat, she should reproduce it before witnesses. Randolph added, unless memory has improved with grievance. Anthony's posture changed, but he did not refuse on Felicity's behalf. The choice is Miss Eldridge's, he said. Every face turned toward her. A public demonstration could restore her name or destroy what little trade confidence remained. If the Kinnertons controlled the cards, loom, or inspection, the challenge was not generous. Yet refusal would become their proof before sunset. I'll demonstrate the corrected repeat, Felicity said. The cards will be prepared under independent witness. The loom will be inspected before use. Every condition will be entered in writing. Eugenia's smile thinned. You've become cautious. I've become documented. When the guests began to leave, an elderly man in a worn coat waited near the servants' passage. Mr. Doran recognized him as Abel Vickery, a retired card cutter from Shoreditch. Vickery led them to a quiet landing and removed a folded note from inside his coat. I cut the first Seven-Willow chain in February of 1862, he said. Miss Eldridge's name was in my book. Square registration notch along the upper edge. Felicity felt her pulse change. You still have the entry. The original book is at my workshop. And the second chain? Mr. Doran asked. Vickery looked toward the luncheon room, where Randolph's voice could still be heard. Ordered by the Honourable Randolph Kinnerton on March 28. 10 days after Lady Amabel died, Anthony's face became still. What source did he provide? A strip of woven silk. Said he wanted a replacement chain counted from the cloth. The same registration mark? Felicity asked. No, miss. Vickery's fingers tightened around the note. He ordered a crescent cut into the side edge, so his men could distinguish the copy from the first. Abel Vickery's workshop stood behind a narrow Shoreditch yard, where card stock dried upon racks and the air smelled of paste, oil, and scorched horn. On the morning of June 19, he placed his original job book on the bench and kept one hand upon it while Mr. Caleb Doran read. Felicity stood opposite with Anthony, Mr. Bell, and 2 independent witnesses from the exhibition committee. The February 1862 entry named Miss Felicity Eldridge as draftswoman and Lady Amabel Halewick as patron. Beside the measurements appeared a note in Vickery's compact hand. Square registration notch along upper edge. Sequence supplied by Miss Eldridge. I cut from your working draft, he told Felicity. You checked the first dozen cards yourself. And the March order? She asked. Vickery turned several pages. March 28, 1862, 10 days after Amabel's death. The Honourable Randolph Kinnerton had ordered a complete replacement chain counted from a woven strip. The entry contained no Halewick authority, no draftswoman's signature, and no reference to an original paper sequence. He brought the cloth wrapped in blue paper, Vickery said. Black ground, silver-grey willows. One pale crossing looked wrong to me, but he said every thread was to be copied as it stood. Anthony's jaw tightened. Did he explain where the cloth came from? He called it exhibition property. And the crescent notch? Felicity asked, his instruction. Side edge, not upper edge, he said. His men needed to distinguish the replacement from the first chain. Vickery opened a shallow drawer and removed a single stiff card inside an old paper sleeve. One side bore a crescent-shaped registration cut. Several operating holes had been pricked but not fully opened. "Rejected for a weak corner," he said. "I kept it because the spring stock was poor and I meant to argue with the supplier." Felicity did not touch it. "Does the paper match the duplicate order?" "Same batch, same thickness, same punch spacing." Mr. Doran recorded the card's condition before Vickery transferred it under receipt. The original job book remained on the workshop bench. The rejected card entered Doran's custody inside a separate sealed fold. "This proves Randolph ordered a chain from woven silk," Felicity said. "It doesn't yet prove the strip was Lady Amabel's missing prototype." Anthony looked toward the card. The Bond Street record may. They reached the trimming shop shortly before noon. Mrs. Vale had already sent word to the proprietor, who brought out the original daybook for May 1862. It remained on his counter while Mr. Doran compared the entry with the fan measurements. The Kinnerton account had paid for labor upon 1 yard of customer-supplied black-figured ribbon. The instructions required the cloth to be folded lengthwise, doubled, passed through a flat knot, and stitched into a wrist loop for an ivory fan. Delivery had been made through Lady Eugenia's maid. "Did the shop supply any of the silk?" Doran asked. "No," the proprietor said. "The customer's parcel came sealed with the Kinnerton account note." "Do you remember the maid?" "Not her name. She had a dark blue livery cloak and said the work was urgent." He signed a certified extract. The original daybook never left the shop. Outside, London traffic pressed close around them. Felicity stood beneath the striped awning, while Doran secured the extract beside Vickery's statement. By May 1862, the Kinnerton household possessed 1 yard of first trial Seven-Willow silk, she said. Randolph had already commissioned cards from woven cloth. The same household then supplied 1 yard to make Eugenia's fan loop. "And they expected no one to compare it with your length," Anthony said. "Perhaps we still don't know who removed Amabel's prototype." A fine black filament clung to Anthony's coat sleeve, caught near the cuff from the trimming room counter. Felicity noticed it as he turned. "May I?" she asked. His eyes lowered to her hand. "Yes." She lifted the silk from his sleeve with 2 fingers. The touch was brief, chosen by her, and so careful that it unsettled her more than accident would have done. She placed the filament in the shop's waste tray, not among the evidence. Anthony watched her hand withdraw. "I used to prefer a version of Amabel who needed no one," he said quietly. Felicity looked at him. "That sounds less like memory than convenience." It was. His voice held no defense. "If she needed no one, then I hadn't failed to notice whom she trusted. I could tell myself, you were merely useful to her work. It made refusing you easier." The street noise seemed to recede for one breath. "You made me easy to dismiss, because that protected the brother you believed yourself to be. Yes, understanding that doesn't repair the dismissal. No, but I won't hide from naming it." Mr. Doran emerged from the shop before the silence required an answer. By evening, the corrected demonstration chain was being prepared in a committee workroom at Hanover Square. Felicity rebuilt the sequence from her certified draft, while Mr. Bell checked every 10th card, and Doran recorded the order. The upper registration edge carried square notches throughout. The chain was then folded into an evidence box designed with 2 separate protections. Its lid closed beneath 2 locks. 1 key remained with the trade officer. The second remained with Doran's clerk. Neither key could open the cabinet in which the box would be stored, and the cabinet key could not open the box lid. Along the side of the box, ran a narrow inspection panel used to examine card tension without lifting the lid. That panel had its own pins and a separate thread and wax seal. "The weakness is the side opening," Felicity said. "If someone reaches the chain through it, the lid seals may remain intact." The trade officer nodded. "Then we record the panel as carefully as the lid." Dark grey thread was tied with the knot facing left. A small flaw in the committee seal appeared as a nick on the right side of the impression. Pin scratches, thread shade, knot direction, and wax depth were entered in the ledger. Before the final seal was made, the trade officer pressed 3 trial impressions into scrap wax to test the matrix. 2 were gathered and destroyed in the brazier. The third could not be found. "Who handled the scraps?" Doran asked. "Myself, Tallow, and the junior custodian," the officer said. "The custodian's name is Price." "Who has access to the cabinet overnight?" Felicity asked. "Price holds the night duty key according to the rota. He may open the cabinet to inspect the room, but he has no authority to touch the box, the lid, or the side panel." "And Tallow?" "He is the exhibition foreman. No cabinet key." Felicity looked at the missing trial impression. A copied matrix could be made from wax if someone acted before the details softened. "Enter the missing impression in the record," she said, "and enter Price's possession of the cabinet key." The corrected chain was placed inside. The lid was locked and sealed. The side panel was pinned, threaded, and sealed separately. Price signed the cabinet ledger when the box was stored. The trade officer and Doran's clerk left with their respective lid keys. Felicity returned at dawn on June 20 with both key holders, Mr. Bell and 2 committee witnesses. The cabinet showed no forced entry. Its register carried Price's signature for a tension inspection shortly before 7. The box lid seals remained intact. The side panel seal looked undisturbed at first glance. Felicity bent closer. The thread was not charcoal grey, but silver grey. The copied nick sat on the left side of the wax instead of the right. "Don't open it," she said. The trade officer stopped with his hand above the panel. "The seal has been replaced. The lid?" Anthony asked from behind the witness line. "Still sealed." Felicity looked at Price's inspection entry, the reversed flaw, and the thread that was almost correct. Someone had entered the cabinet with the proper night key, left the lid untouched, and imitated the side seal from memory or from the missing trial impression. She turned to Mr. Doran. "Record my formal objection before the demonstration begins." By 9 o'clock on June 20, the Hanover Square rooms had filled with merchants, dressmakers, titled patrons, and reporters who expected to see the Seven-Willow ribbon proved or buried before luncheon. The demonstration loom stood upon a low platform beneath a row of tall windows. Its beam carried fresh black silk. The evidence box rested on a guarded table nearby, its lid seals intact, and its side panel seal visibly different to anyone who had read the morning record. Price's signature appeared in the cabinet register beside a tension inspection entered shortly before 7. Tallow's name appeared beneath it as exhibition foreman. The trade officer denied authorizing either man to touch the box. Mr. Hales, chairman of the committee, listened to Felicity's objection with the impatience of a man watching buyers consult their watches. "The cabinet was opened by the appointed night custodian," he said. "The lid remains sealed. We cannot dismantle the entire chain because one thread appears lighter than another." "The seal flaw is reversed," Felicity replied. The missing trial impression made a copied matrix possible. The side panel can be opened without disturbing the lid. Mr. Hales glanced toward the crowded gallery. A full unfolding now may damage the chain and provoke an argument over handling before the demonstration begins. Then enter my objection in full. Mr. Caleb Doran stood at the clerk's table, pen ready. Felicity continued. Record that the cabinet was opened with Price's night duty key. Record that the side seal differs from the one witnessed last evening. Record that I requested inspection before the chain was mounted. And if the committee declines, Mr. Hales asked, then reduce the speed. Stop at the first abnormal shed. Preserve the box, chain, cards, sealing thread, pins, and every inch woven today. A murmur moved through the merchants. Eugenia sat near the front in pearl grey silk, her expression serene. Randolph stood beside Mr. Hales with the confidence of a man who believed delay itself would look like fear. Miss Eldridge is creating conditions under which no failure can ever be called hers, Eugenia said. Felicity looked at her. I am creating conditions under which failure can be examined. Anthony stood behind the witness rail rather than beside Felicity. He had not spoken over her objection or used his rank to force a ruling. When Mr. Hales looked toward him, Anthony said only, "The committee has heard the draftswoman. Let its decision be recorded." Mr. Hales exhaled. The protest is entered. The demonstration will proceed at reduced speed. The trade officer and Doran's clerk used their separate lid keys. The lid opened under witness. The chain lay folded as Felicity had left it. The visible first and final cards carried square notches along the upper edge. The side panel remained closed because the committee would not unfold the whole sequence. Belle and Felicity mounted the chain without separating its folds. Felicity tested the treadles, shuttle race, warp tension, and card advance. Nothing in the loom itself explained the counterfeit seal. Mr. Cresswell stood near the first row with his order book closed beneath one arm. Two dressmakers whispered over sample lengths already bearing the Kinnerton name. The public cost of failure stood within a few yards of her. Felicity placed her father's ebony shuttle on the race. She had woven the first trial with that same shuttle, while Amabel watched from a chair near the window. Memory pressed close, but she did not allow it to guide her hands. Mechanism required attention, not grief. "Ready," she said. Belle engaged the chain. The first cards advanced. Felicity sent the shuttle through. Black silk crossed silver-grey weft. The first willow trunk formed cleanly, then the second. By the end of the first repeat, 7 slender trees bent toward one another without losing a thread at the selvage. The second repeat followed, then the third. The room quieted. By the fourth, Mr. Cresswell had opened his order book. At the fifth, one dressmaker leaned forward and whispered that the return was cleaner than the Kinnerton samples. Felicity heard neither praise nor relief as permission to relax. She watched the cards, the shed, and the advancing fold. The next section entered the frame. A faint resistance traveled through the treadle. Slow. Belle reduced the pace. The sixth fold advanced. For one instant the shed appeared correct. Then 3 holes engaged where none should have opened. Silver-grey thread crossed the black ground in a hard horizontal line, severing the willow trunks through their middle. The floor spread across the width before Felicity stopped the loom. Silence struck the room. Mr. Cresswell closed his order book. The sound was soft but unmistakable. One dressmaker, who had asked about a private commission, stepped back from the platform. "I can't risk the season on an uncertain repeat," she said. Eugenia rose with graceful reluctance, as though sorrow forced her to speak. Confidence can imitate authority for several minutes. It cannot sustain a pattern. Randolph did not smile. He did not need to. The gallery had already begun making his argument for him. Felicity looked at the failed silk. Shame tried to enter as memory, carrying every letter that had called her troublesome, every empty shelf left after the folios were sold, every polite refusal from men now watching her. She breathed once. The sixth fold had failed after 5 perfect repeats. That was not the behavior of an incorrect design. It was the behavior of an altered sequence. "Do not cut the silk," she said. "Do not remove the chain." Mr. Hales lifted a hand. "Miss Eldridge, the demonstration has concluded." "No, the weaving has stopped. The examination begins." Anthony stepped forward only far enough to be heard. "No finding will be entered until the protested evidence is inspected." Randolph turned. "Your Grace cannot convert failure into conspiracy, because the result displeases him. I have declared no conspiracy. I am asking the committee to examine the very object it refused to inspect before the demonstration." Mr. Hales hesitated, aware now that the room's attention had shifted from spectacle to procedure. Felicity addressed him. "Release the 6th fold from the frame. Do not detach it from the chain." Bell and the trade officer complied. The altered section emerged beneath the witness lamps. Its obvious side edges had been shaved narrow. Most of the crescent registration marks had disappeared. Felicity used an ivory pick to lift the binding cord at one corner. Beneath it, protected from trimming, remained a curved scar no wider than a grain of barley. Abel Vickery came forward with the sealed rejected card. Mr. Doran broke that seal under witness. Vickery placed the card beside the 6th fold without contact. "Same spring stock," he said. "Same punch spacing. The side edge has been pared away, but that curve is part of the crescent cut." Several operating holes in the altered fold had been recut. Their edges were fresher than the original holes. Felicity traced the false sequence without touching it. These 3 openings produced the silver line. The correct cards would have held those threads below. Mr. Hales looked toward Randolph. "Can the fold be repaired?" "Yes," Felicity said, "but not today and not before it is recorded. Repair would destroy part of the evidence. The 6th fold remained attached. The entire chain was removed from the loom, wrapped as one object, and sealed beneath committee witness. The failed silk remained on the loom beam and received its own seal. The box, side panel thread, wax impression, pins, and cabinet register were lodged with the committee clerk. Mr. Doran then placed the previous evening's seal sketch beside the counterfeit impression. The true nick appeared on the right. The new one sat on the left, copied as a mirror image. The lighter thread matched exhibition supplies rather than the charcoal grey thread used by Doran. "Who signed the cabinet entry?" Mr. Hales asked. "Price," the clerk said. "And who ordered the inspection?" Tallow entered the instruction beneath it. The trade officer shook his head. "I gave no such order." A steward was sent to find both men. Price had not left the building, but Tallow had disappeared after the demonstration began. His wages for the exhibition had been entered under the Kinnerton account. The committee suspended judgment. That did not reopen Mr. Cresswell's book or restore the dressmaker's confidence. Felicity stepped down from the platform beneath 100 measuring eyes. Anthony waited beyond the rail. He did not reach for her. He opened his hand between them. The choice remained hers. Felicity looked at the hand that had once closed a room against her and now offered only support she could refuse. She placed her gloved fingers in his. He closed his hand carefully. Together, they walked through the gallery while whispers followed them. Anthony did not draw her nearer or turn her acceptance into a public claim. He held on through the hostile room and into the vestibule. Only when Felicity loosened her fingers did he release her. "Did it defeat you?" he asked quietly. "It hurt me." She looked back toward the sealed loom. "That is not the same thing." Mr. Doran's clerk hurried through the doors with fresh notes. "Crow, the workman who replaced the panel pins, has been found. A boy from the loom room is asking to speak before Tallow reaches him." Felicity turned toward the committee rooms. "Separate them. Question Price first about the key, then Crow, then the boy." Anthony nodded. "You will lead." Somewhere between the fifth perfect repeat and the ruined sixth, someone had expected humiliation to end every question. Instead, it had shown them exactly where to begin. The committee rooms at Hanover Square remained open on June 21, though the exhibition gallery below had gone quiet. Felicity refused the carriage Anthony had ordered to take her back to Mayfair. "The person who understands the mechanism must define the questions," she said. "If I leave now, frightened witnesses will be questioned by men who know rank better than cards." Anthony dismissed the carriage. "Then you will lead." Mr. Caleb Doran arranged separate rooms so no witness could hear another. Price, the junior custodian, was brought in first. He looked scarcely older than 20. "You held the night duty cabinet key?" Felicity asked. "Yes, miss." "Did anyone else hold it?" "Not according to the rota." "Did you open the cabinet before 7 yesterday morning?" "I did." "Why?" Price looked toward Anthony. The Duke remained behind Felicity's chair, silent. "Mr. Tallow said the card tension had shifted in the damp. He told me the trade officer had approved an inspection." "Did you see written authority?" "No." "Did the cabinet lock show damage?" "No." "Because you used the proper key?" "Yes. I didn't open the lid. No one has said you did." "Did you touch the side panel seal?" "Not at first." "At what point?" "After Mr. Crow removed the pins. Mr. Tallow said the old thread had frayed and told me to fetch wax and new thread." "Which thread?" "The silver-grey spool from the exhibition cupboard." "Did you know the recorded thread was charcoal?" "No." "Who pressed the wax?" "Mr. Tallow." "With the committee matrix?" Price swallowed. "With a wooden-handled copy." "Where did he obtain it?" Felicity asked. "I don't know. He said it had been made from a trial impression." Price admitted relocking the cabinet and signing the tension inspection entry, because Tallow told him the trade officer would approve it later. He denied seeing Randolph or knowing which cards had been changed. Felicity did not force certainty where fear and ignorance already separated. "Your statement will show what you did and what you did not see," she said. "It will not be improved by guessing." Matthew Crow entered next with his leather tool roll under one arm. He confirmed that Price had unlocked the cabinet before Crow arrived. The side panel thread had already been cut. Tallow ordered him to remove the 2 pins, claiming one had seized. "Was it seized?" Felicity asked. "One was stiff. The other came clean." "What did Tallow do while you worked?" He drew a folded section toward the opening with a wooden rule. "Could you see the card edges?" They'd been pared narrow. One still showed part of a curve beneath the binding. "A crescent. Part of one." Crow saw a second folded packet on the bench, but did not see who brought it. When Price returned with wax and lighter thread, Tallow ordered Crow to turn the panel over and examine the hinge groove. Crow obeyed, though not completely. In the reflection of a polished tool blade, he saw Tallow exchange one folded section for another. "Did you understand what he was changing?" Felicity asked. "Not then." "Why did you remain silent?" "Because Tallow hires half the temporary men in that hall." Mr. Doran read the statement back, preserving each correction. Samuel Pike was brought in last. He was perhaps 15, narrow-shouldered, with card dust caught in the seams of his cuffs. The sight of Anthony stopped him at the threshold. "Am I to be taken up?" he asked. "No," Anthony said. Felicity moved a chair away from the table so Samuel would not sit surrounded. "No one here can promise that speaking will cost you nothing," she said. "Mr. Tallow may dismiss you. Other masters may hesitate to take a boy connected to scandal. My wages pay for the room where my mother sleeps. The relief fund and placement arrangement were created before you gave evidence. Mr. Bell and 2 neutral masters will decide applications. Your answer today cannot purchase help, and silence cannot disqualify you." He looked up. "Then, why should I talk? Because you should not carry another man's guilt, simply because he can threaten your bread." Samuel sat. He had fetched the pliers. He had seen Price unlock the cabinet and stand near the passage while Tallow worked at the side panel. He had watched the folded section come out and another go in. "Did you see the new cards?" Felicity asked. "Only the edges." They looked shaved. "Who else came through the passage?" Samuel's fingers closed around the edge of his cap. "Mr. Kinnerton." Anthony moved before the room had absorbed the name. "Bring Tallow here," Samuel recoiled. Felicity placed her hand upon Anthony's sleeve. Dark wool lay warm beneath her palm. "Let him finish." Anthony looked at her hand, then at the boy. His anger did not vanish, but he stopped immediately and stepped back. "You are right." Felicity withdrew only when Samuel's breathing steadied. "Where did Mr. Kinnerton stand?" she asked. "By the side door. Did he touch the box?" "Not while I saw him. Did he speak?" "Yes. Tell us only the words you remember." Samuel shut his eyes. He said, "Not before the 5th. The 6th must fail." No one moved. "Did Mr. Kinnerton pay you?" Felicity asked. "No." "Did Tallow?" "A shilling. He said it was for keeping the room tidy." "Did you know why the fold was being changed?" "Not until yesterday, when the silk broke wrong. I thought if I spoke, no one would take me on again." "You have spoken now," Felicity said. "The consequence belongs to the men who used your fear." Samuel signed with an uneven hand. Tallow was found that afternoon at a Kinnerton warehouse near the river, where he had gone to collect wages entered through Randolph's secretary. Before Mr. Doran and 2 witnesses, he admitted receiving payment to replace the 6th fold and to create a false tension inspection entry. He did not claim Randolph had handed him money directly. Doran took the admission under oath and left the larger criminal questions for the magistrate. Lady Edith joined Felicity, Anthony, Doran, and Nell in a smaller chamber overlooking the wet street. Doran produced a statement already taken from the pavilion attendant at Marlowe Chase. Before the memorial began, Eugenia had asked whether Felicity herself had tied the black ribbon around the wreath. She had also requested a place beside the narrow path leading to the platform. "It shows preparation and position," Felicity said. "It doesn't yet prove she intended the wreath to fall." "It will be lodged, not embellished," Doran replied. A messenger arrived before dusk with an express letter forwarded through a Winchester parish. Hester Knoll had written in a firm but aging hand. She confirmed that the original Seven-Willow card chain had once rested in compartment 7. After Amabel discovered that one finished 1-yard prototype was missing, she ordered Hester to move the chain into a concealed lower lining of the cedar press. Mrs. Pruett witnessed the packing. The press traveled to London with the chain hidden inside. When it returned on April 28, Hester inspected the concealed panel and found it closed. Then came Amabel's final instruction. The lining was not to be opened unless Felicity Eldridge stood in the room. Lady Edith covered her mouth. Anthony read the final sentence twice. Her ladyship said the Seven-Willows belonged to 2 women, and one day the press must be made to prove it. "We return to Hampshire tomorrow," he said. Felicity folded the letter along its existing crease. "For the evidence." His eyes met hers. "For the evidence." Somewhere inside Amabel's cedar press, the original chain had crossed the distance to London, and back beneath the eyes of people who believed it had vanished. Felicity could not yet know whether the hidden lining held only cards, or whether Amabel had left behind the truth she had been too afraid to speak aloud. The return to Hampshire began before 8 on June 22nd, after the Hanover Square committee clerk released the sealed evidence chest to Mr. Caleb Doran under written receipt for comparison with whatever might be recovered from the cedar press, the ivory fan, torn wreath ribbon, loose hinge fibers, rejected crescent, notched card, counterfeit seal, failed silk, and sabotage chain travelled under the same recorded custody. The altered 6th fold remained attached to that chain and was wrapped with it as one evidence object. Doran kept the travelling case locked beneath his hand throughout the journey from Waterloo. Felicity carried only her work-basket and the ebony shuttle. Lady Edith and Nell shared the railway compartment with her, while Anthony sat opposite, beside the solicitor. He spoke little. Neither he nor Felicity referred to the hand she had placed upon his sleeve, while Samuel Pike gave evidence, though she remembered how quickly he had stopped, and how completely he had yielded the room back to the frightened boy. The carriage from the station reached Marlowe Chase after dusk. Hester Knoll had arrived before them and waited in the entrance hall wearing a plain brown gown and a bonnet faded by travel. She looked smaller than Felicity remembered, but the moment she saw her, she straightened. "I should've written years ago," Hester said. "You have written now," Felicity replied. "Tomorrow you'll tell us what happened." No one opened the textile room that night. The cedar press had remained untouched since June 16, and Doran insisted that daylight, complete witnesses, and a fresh inventory were required. At 9 the next morning, June 23, the room was opened in the presence of Felicity, Anthony, Lady Edith, Doran, Hester, Mrs. Pruett, Mr. Harbury, and Nell. The sealed London evidence chest remained closed near the door. The original object count had not changed. Hester stood before the press and rested one hand against its cedar frame. The finished length went missing in the first week of March 1862, she said. Lady Amabel had kept it wrapped in blue tissue beneath her drawing case. "When had you last seen it?" Doran asked. "The morning after Lady Eugenia and Mr. Kinnerton came to discuss the Hanover Square exhibition. Lady Eugenia wanted to know which samples would travel. Mr. Kinnerton asked how the press compartments were numbered." Anthony's face hardened. "Did you see either of them take the ribbon?" "No, Your Grace." "Then we record access and timing," Felicity said. "Not theft." Hester nodded. That was Lady Amabel's view as well. She said suspicion was not proof. But she no longer trusted compartment 7. She opened the upper compartment, showing the faded lining and the pressure marks left by the absent cards. The original chain had rested here since the first trial. After the ribbon vanished, Lady Amabel ordered me to move it. "Where?" Felicity asked, though the letter had already named the lower lining, into a concealed panel beneath the lowest drawer. Hester looked toward Mrs. Pruett. Mrs. Pruett helped me lift the inner board. Mrs. Pruett confirmed it. I saw a folded chain with small square cuts along the upper edge. I didn't understand the marks. Hester continued. We wrapped the short loom header working swatch around the chain. It was no finished length. It was scarcely longer than my hand and twice my palm. Lady Amabel added a cost sheet and a memorandum tied with black thread. "Who closed the panel?" Doran asked. "Mrs. Pruett and I." Then the press was packed for London. Mr. Harbury opened the dispatch ledger. The press left April 4 and returned April 28. "Did you inspect the hidden panel after its return?" Felicity asked. "Yes. I had tied a narrow interior thread across the fastening before the press travelled. When it came back, that thread was still whole. I did not open the panel." "Why not?" Anthony asked. Hester looked at him. "Because your sister's final instruction was that it should remain closed unless Miss Eldridge stood in the room." The words entered the silence without comfort. Doran first recorded the lower moulding, dust line, screw heads, and hinges. Hester pressed 2 concealed catches beneath the cedar lip. A narrow panel released with a dry wooden breath. Inside, a faded blue lining lay undisturbed beneath the intact interior thread Hester had described. Doran cut the thread only after every witness had signed the entry. Hester reached in and named each object before placing it upon clean paper. First came the original card chain, folded into a compact bundle. Its upper edges carried square registration notches. Felicity recognized her compressed figures in the margins and the correction she had added after the first failed advance. The chain had not been cut, copied, or repaired. Next came a short strip of black figured silk. 7 silver-grey willows bent through the ground, and at the 16th repeat, the familiar pale crossing lay at the wrong level. "The loom header working swatch," Felicity said. "Not a third 1-yard prototype." Doran entered the distinction. Beneath it lay a cost sheet naming Lady Amabel Halewick as patron and symbolic, co-designer, and Miss Felicity Eldridge as pattern draftswoman responsible for repeat construction, selvage return, working cards, and loom direction. Lady Edith lowered herself into a chair. Anthony did not move. The final object was a memorandum folded around plain black thread. Doran recorded the fold, paper, ink, position, and knot before allowing Felicity to open it. Amabel's hand appeared first. The opening paragraphs described the Seven-Willow design exactly as it had existed between them. Amabel had chosen the symbolic arrangement, mourning palette, and visual character. Felicity had translated those ideas into a repeat the loom could execute. The design was to bear both names. Felicity read the lines twice. Relief came without softness. Her work had survived in ink, card, cloth, and Amabel's signature. It had crossed to London, hidden inside the same press that later returned to a locked room. It had waited while merchants closed their books and her father's folios were scattered. "There is another paragraph," Doran said. Felicity had already seen it. Amabel asked that Felicity's public credit be delayed for 1 London season. She feared Anthony would oppose any commercial association between the Halewick name and a working draftswoman. She believed the ribbon should first secure fashionable acceptance, after which the joint credit could be announced with less danger. She promised to correct the omission. Lady Edith pressed her handkerchief to her mouth. Anthony looked at the memorandum as though it had turned toward him. "Did you agree to this?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "She was ill. She was frightened. I loved her." Felicity placed the paper flat. "That does not make the request harmless." "No." His voice was scarcely above a breath. "She feared me. She feared your judgment and the world your judgment represented." Anthony's hand closed around the edge of the table, and after she died, I completed what fear had begun. Felicity looked at Amabel's signature. Loving her does not require us to call her blameless. No, naming her failure does not erase what she gave me. No, he came no nearer. Grief had stripped the authority from his posture, but he did not ask her to comfort him. May I hold you? The question was quiet and without expectation. Felicity looked at him across the recovered cards, the swatch, the cost sheet, and the memorandum that had returned her name while exposing the price of Amabel's love. She did not forgive him. She did not absolve the dead. Yet she understood that the truth had wounded them differently and left neither untouched. Yes. Anthony crossed the small distance with care. His arms closed around her without force. Felicity placed both arms around him and held him in return. The embrace did not restore contracts or folios. It did not repair the wreath. It acknowledged pain without asking either of them to surrender judgment. Anthony's breath left him against her hair. He did not kiss her. When Felicity stepped back, he released her at once. Doran placed the original chain, working swatch, cost sheet, and full memorandum into separate protective folds and sealed each under witness. The memorandum must appear in full before any hearing, Felicity said. Anthony looked at the final paragraph. It will be examined. The answer was measured enough to trouble her. The next morning, June 24, Doran sent Felicity the proposed schedule for the Independent Spitalfields Committee. The joint authorship passages appeared in full. The paragraph in which Amabel asked her to remain uncredited was missing. Beneath the omission, in Doran's unmistakable hand, stood a single line. Removed by instruction of the Duke of Brantham, Felicity carried the incomplete hearing schedule into Anthony's study before breakfast on June 24. The original memorandum remained sealed under Mr. Caleb Doran's custody, with the recovered square-notched chain, loom header working swatch, cost sheet, and the evidence brought back from London. Only the proposed schedule had been altered. That distinction made the act no less deliberate. Lady Edith sat near the window. Mr. Doran stood beside the writing table with his ledger closed. Anthony faced the cold fireplace, already dressed, his posture controlled enough to reveal how long he had been waiting. Felicity placed the pages before him and touched the blank space where Amabel's final paragraph should have appeared. Did you order this removed? Yes. He did not pretend it was a clerical mistake. Why? Because the committee can establish your technical authorship without it. The chain, working swatch, Bell's book, Vicary's records, the cost sheet, and the first trial error already prove your work. That isn't an answer. Anthony looked at the missing paragraph. Randolph will use it to say, you consented to anonymity. He will argue that Amabel delayed your credit because your claim was uncertain. He will turn her fear into a weapon against you. Then the committee should hear the whole memorandum and judge what it means. I was trying to protect you from an argument designed to humiliate you by deciding which truth I'm permitted to survive. Lady, Edith drew a quiet breath. Anthony turned toward Felicity. I was also trying to protect Amabel's memory. From whom? From people who never knew her. No, Felicity's voice remained level. You were trying to protect yourself from mourning a woman who was loving, frightened, brave, and capable of asking another woman to bear the cost of her safety. The words reached him without violence, and that made their force harder to resist. His hand tightened once at his side. Felicity continued. If the paragraph is omitted, House Halewick appears generous. Lady Amabel appears to have intended equal credit without compromise. You appear to have discovered an injustice and corrected it. I appear after 2 years with a claim no one can see was delayed by a titled woman's fear. I would testify that I refused you access after her death. Society will praise you for honesty and still never learn why Amabel believed my name endangered hers. Anthony looked down at the schedule. I was wrong. Yes, the paragraph will be restored. That is no longer enough. His gaze rose. What do you mean? Felicity had spent the night deciding what affection could not be allowed to change. The embrace in the textile room had been real. So was the omission made after it. The hearing cannot remain under Halewick direction. I will petition an independent Spitalfields committee. 3 master weavers and 2 silk merchants without Kinnerton or Halewick accounts. The technical finding must be separated from any civil accounting. And from whatever criminal information Mr. Doran later lays before a magistrate. Lady Edith stood. Felicity, you needn't leave this house to do that. I do. Where will you go? To lodgings in London. Nell has prepared my trunks. Hester will come if she chooses. Anthony did not ask whether the decision could be postponed. What else? The evidence must be lodged beyond your control. The original memorandum will be entered in full. The copied schedule, including Mr. Doran's note of your instruction, will also be preserved. Witnesses will speak under terms not set by House Halewick. Mr. Doran opened his ledger. Miss Eldridge asked me last night what procedure would permit that. Her petition is ready. Anthony looked at the solicitor. You knew she intended to leave. I knew she required legal independence, Doran said. I answered the question she asked. Anthony returned his attention to Felicity. I won't stop you. That is the minimum required. Pain crossed his face, but he did not use it to make her gentler. May I say one thing? If it does not ask me to stay. Yesterday, when I asked to hold you, I believed I had finally understood what truth required of me. Felicity's hands remained still. You understood what pain required in that moment. Truth required you to relinquish control afterward. And I failed. Yes, no touch passed between them. Anthony did not step nearer. The embrace remained part of what had happened, but it could not be used as payment against the injury that followed. The full paragraph will be restored, he said. Not by your permission. Mr. Doran will submit the sealed original. Understood. You will not speak before the technical evidence as though you are restoring my name. Understood. Any transfer of rights must occur whether I forgive you or not. Understood. There will be no courtship attached to the hearing, no public understanding, and no suggestion that affection is the price of justice. His face lost what little color remained. There will not. Felicity turned to Lady Edith. I am not asking you to choose between your children and me. Lady Edith's eyes shone. Amabel was wrong to ask this of you. She was, and Anthony was wrong to remove it. Yes. The Dowager Duchess pressed her fingers together. Then let the whole truth stand. That is all I ask. Hester and Nell waited in the entrance hall beside 2 modest trunks. Felicity carried her own work-basket. The ebony shuttle rested inside, wrapped in plain cloth. Anthony followed no farther than the top of the front steps. He did not offer his hand or ask for a final word before the carriage door closed. Felicity looked back once. He stood alone beneath the stone portico, not as the Duke who could command her return, but as the man who had discovered too late that love did not make control benevolent. The carriage turned toward the drive. Only after Marlowe Chase disappeared, behind the trees, did Felicity's allow herself to close her eyes. She did not weep. She counted the turns of the wheels and thought of the committee petition waiting in Mr. Doran's case. By evening, Anthony sat alone at Amabel's old work table, while Doran placed fresh paper before him. The recovered evidence remained sealed nearby, each object still under the custody recorded that morning. Miss Eldridge has requested a statement of fact, Doran said, not an apology. Anthony took up the pen. He admitted that House Hailwick prejudice had made delay of Felicity's credit appear reasonable. He admitted refusing her access after Amabel's death. He admitted allowing Eugenia's account of sole authorship to stand because it made grief simpler. He admitted ordering a material paragraph removed after the full truth had been recovered. He wrote that no restoration of authorship, commercial rights, profits, evidence, or public credit would depend upon Felicity's residence, affection, forgiveness, courtship, or marriage. When he finished, he signed his full name and title. Mr. Doran read the statement once. If the committee finds joint authorship, are you prepared to surrender every Hailwick commercial interest in the Seven-Willow design? Yes, even if Miss Eldridge never returns to you. Anthony looked toward the empty loom and the compartment he had once kept closed. Yes. Doran drew another sheet from his case. Then I will prepare a deed and a trust instrument. The rights will pass to named trustees for Miss Eldridge's soul and separate use if the finding is entered. You will not retain power to revoke the transfer. Good. You understand that this will protect the design, licenses, profits, archive rights, and future derivative contracts beyond any later marriage. Anthony's answer came without hesitation. That is precisely what it must do. Anthony waited in the passage outside Felicity's Spitalfields lodgings until Nell opened the door and told him he might enter. It was the morning of June 25. Rain had darkened the narrow street, and cartwheels whispered over the wet stones below. Inside the modest sitting room, Felicity stood beside a square table with Hester Knoll. Lady Edith occupied the chair nearest the window. Mr. Caleb Doran had arrived before Anthony and placed a flat document case beside his ledger. Anthony removed his hat, but came no farther into the room than Felicity's silence allowed. He had not brought flowers, apology gifts, or the Hailwick crest. The petition has been accepted, Doran said. The committee will sit tomorrow. 3 master weavers and 2 silk merchants have been selected. None holds a Kinnerton or Hailwick account. He placed the written notice on the table. Their authority is limited. They may examine the textile evidence, hear witnesses, record authorship, determine whether the public demonstrations was altered, and enter their findings in the trade minutes. They cannot convict anyone, impose imprisonment, or settle the civil accounting. And the magistrate? Felicity asked. Sworn depositions will be laid before him after the technical finding. The civil claim will remain separate. Good. One proceeding must not pretend to accomplish all 3. Doran opened the document case and removed Anthony's signed admission. Felicity read it standing. The statement named House Hailwick's prejudice, Anthony's refusal to grant her access after Amabel's death, his failure to challenge Eugenia's account of sole authorship, and his instruction to remove a material paragraph from the proposed schedule. It also declared that no return of credit, rights, profits, evidence, or public recognition would depend upon Felicity's residence, affection, forgiveness, courtship, or marriage. Anthony watched her reach the final line. He did not explain it. This will be submitted in full, she asked. After the technical evidence, as you required, Doran said. He then placed 2 tied instruments on the table. The first is the deed assigning every commercial interest held by House Hailwick in the Seven-Willow design. The second establishes the trust through which those interests will be held if the committee records joint authorship. Felicity untied the plain tape and read the terms named Josiah Bell and Samuel Mordaunt as trustees. Upon a finding of joint authorship, the rights would vest in them for the sole and separate use of Felicity Eldridge. The trust covered the design, licenses, profits, archive use, and all future derivative contracts. No marriage, residence, patronage, or forgiveness condition appeared. Anthony retained no power of revocation. "Can he prevent delivery before tomorrow?" Felicity asked. "No," Doran replied. "He executed both instruments before witnesses last night. The trustees will receive them today. Can he direct how the rights are used afterward?" "No, the trustees owe their duty to you alone." Felicity looked at Anthony. "You understood what that meant when you signed?" "Yes. Even if I never return to Marlowe Chase." "Yes. Even if I never marry." "Yes." His answer did not seek credit. The rights were never mine to bargain with. 2 committee officers arrived shortly before 10. Mr. Bell came with Mr. Samuel Mordaunt, a master weaver whose family had never supplied either noble house. They presented written authority from the committee clerk. Doran then identified the evidence in 3 groups, rather than turning the room into another recital of labels. The first contained the ivory fan, with its wrist still attached, the torn wreath ribbon, and the loose hinge fibers. The second contained the recovered square-notched chain, the short loom header working swatch, the cost sheet, and the full memorandum. The third contained the sabotaged chain with its altered 6th fold still attached, the rejected crescent-notched card, the counterfeit seal materials, the failed silk, and the sworn statements concerning Price, Crow, Samuel Pike, Tallow, and the pavilion attendant. Each seal was compared with the custody ledger. The objects were then lodged with the committee clerk under Doran's written undertaking. The original books from Bell, Vickery, and the Bond Street Trimmer remained with their owners, represented only by certified extracts and witness testimony. Doran surrendered his temporary custody receipts. The committee clerk accepted one key. Mr. Mordaunt accepted the other. Anthony held none. Felicity watched the keys leave the room. Only then did the tension beneath her ribs begin to ease. Mr. Bell placed the deed and trust instrument in his locked folio. "If the finding is entered tomorrow, the trust will take effect before the committee rises," he said. "No private negotiation can delay it." His eyes settled briefly on Anthony. "Not even a duke's." "Especially not a duke's," Anthony replied. When the custodians had gone, Lady Edith asked Hester to accompany her into the adjoining room. Doran gathered his empty document case and followed, leaving the sitting room door open. Nell remained within call. Felicity stood near the rain-streaked window. Anthony remained beside the table where the keys had rested. The distance between them was no more than a few paces, yet it contained the textile room, the omitted paragraph, the carriage leaving, Marlowe Chase, and the embrace that had not been allowed to erase any of it. "You may speak now," Felicity said. Anthony did not move closer. "I accepted the truth only while I controlled its shape." She waited. "When the final paragraph exposed what Amabel had asked of you, I decided the world should see a cleaner version. I told myself I was protecting you from Randolph and protecting my sister from strangers. I was preserving my own right to arrange the meaning of your injury." His voice remained quiet. "I repeated the harm after I understood it." "Yes," he absorbed the word. "I can't ask you to forget that because I signed papers afterward." "No, The deed proves only that I have stopped keeping what was never mine." Felicity turned from the window. "That is the first useful thing you have said about it." Pain crossed his face, but so did recognition. "Then let me be exact. I'm sorry I made my grief more important than your livelihood. I'm sorry I treated access to the truth as something you had to earn from me. I'm sorry that after I held you and saw what the memorandum cost, I still believed my love for Amabel gave me the right to edit your history. The word love belonged to the dead woman between them. Anthony did not use it to force a confession of his own. I will testify tomorrow, whether you forgive me or not. I will accept the finding, whether you return to Marlowe Chase or not." Felicity looked toward the door through which the evidence had left. "Tomorrow I speak first. Yes, the workers are named only if they consent. Yes, the memorandum is read in full. Yes, you speak after the technical evidence. You do not present yourself as the man who restored my name. I'll say that I helped erase it. There will be no proposal, no public understanding, and no suggestion that justice is part of courtship." His gaze held hers. "There won't." Felicity crossed the room slowly. She had not forgotten the omission. She had not promised forgiveness. Yet the evidence now lay beyond Anthony's reach, and the rights would pass whether affection survived or not. He had come without conditions and remained where she placed him. She lifted one hand and touched his cheek. Anthony became utterly still. He did not lean into her palm until her fingers settled against his skin. "Felicity," he said, "may I kiss you?" She heard no bargain in the question, no claim, no demand that tenderness cancel consequence. Yes, he bent toward her with care. Felicity closed the final distance herself. His mouth met hers in a restrained, tender kiss. One of his hands rose, then paused beside her waist until she placed her free hand over it. Only then did he touch her. The kiss deepened by a breath, and no more. When Felicity drew back, Anthony released her at once. Their foreheads remained near. But he did not ask what the kiss had changed. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice unsteady but clear, "you stand behind the evidence. Not in front of it." "Good." Outside, another cart rolled toward the looms of Spitalfields. The truth would enter the hearing without a Hailwick key upon it, and whatever remained between Felicity and Anthony would have to survive without one as well. The hearing opened at 10 on the morning of June 26 in the upper assembly room of the Spitalfields Weavers' Hall. 3 master weavers and 2 independent silk merchants sat behind the central table. None held an account for House Hailwick or House Kinnerton. A magistrate's clerk waited near the rear wall to receive any sworn papers the committee later chose to forward. But he possessed no authority over the technical finding. The evidence chest stood between Josiah Bell and Samuel Mordaunt, its 2 keys still in separate hands. Felicity sat at the first witness table with her father's ebony shuttle beside her papers. Anthony stood behind the public rail with Lady Edith. He had kept his promise. He was not beside Felicity, not before her, and not positioned where his title might appear to guide the room. Lady Eugenia Kinnerton sat beneath the windows, with Randolph and their solicitor. The ivory fan was absent from her hand. It remained sealed inside the chest, its black wrist loops still attached. When the chairman asked who would begin, Felicity rose. "I will." Her voice crossed the crowded room without strain. "The committee is asked to determine 4 matters: whether the ribbon attached to Lady Eugenia's fan came from the first Seven-Willow trial, whether Lady Amabel Hailwick and I created the design jointly, whether the public demonstration of June 20 was altered, and whether the Kinnerton commercial pattern derived from the missing prototype rather than from an independent design. The chairman inclined his head. Proceed. The chest was opened under witness. Mr. Bell first produced the torn wreath ribbon and the sealed ivory fan. The loop remained stitched to the hinge. Mrs. Vale described how broad-figured silk had been folded lengthwise, doubled, passed through a flat knot, and secured with concealed tails. The certified Bond Street entry was read aloud. It named the Kinnerton account, 1 yard of customer-supplied, black-figured ribbon, and delivery through Lady Eugenia's maid. Felicity placed the torn ribbon and fan beneath separate lenses. The pale crossing at the 16th repeat is not part of the corrected pattern, she said. It is a mechanical error from the first trial. Mr. Bell opened his dated sample book. The dyer's clipping remained pinned to its original page. The same misplaced crossing appeared there. The loose hinge fibers were shown next. Those fibers establish contact between the fan and the wreath on June 14, Felicity said. They do not establish who removed Lady Amabel's ribbon in 1862. The Bond Street record establishes that a Kinnerton account possessed 1 yard of first trial cloth by May of that year. Randolph's solicitor rose. Miss Eldridge assumes that no other length existed. There were 2 finished lengths of 1 yard each, Felicity replied. Mine became the wreath ribbon. Lady Amabel's became missing. The short loom header working swatch is before the committee and could not have supplied this loop. Mr. Mordaunt unfolded the swatch. It was scarcely longer than a handspan. The objection ended there. The second question concerned authorship. Mr. Bell's working book showed Felicity's correction to the Seven-Willow return. In February 1862, Mrs. Arden testified that Felicity had directed the first trial and corrected the failed advance. Abel Vickery identified his original job book entry, naming Felicity as draftswoman and Lady Amabel as patron. The original square-notched card chain was lifted under witness and mounted on the committee loom. Felicity did not begin at once. She explained the sequence, the selvage return, and the corrected 16th card. Then she took the ebony shuttle. The first repeat formed cleanly. The second followed, 7 silver-grey willows, bent through black silk, without losing a trunk at the edge. By the 4th repeat, no one in the room could pretend the mechanism belonged to a woman who had merely copied sketches. Felicity stopped the loom and set down the shuttle. Lady Amabel created the symbolic arrangement, selected the mourning palette, financed the trials, and approved the visual form. I translated those ideas into a repeat the loom could execute. Neither contribution was the whole design. The recovered cost sheet confirmed the division. Mr. Doran then broke the seal around the memorandum. Felicity read it herself. She read Amabel's recognition of 2 creators. She also read the final paragraph, asking that Felicity's public credit be delayed for 1 London season, because Amabel feared Anthony's opposition to a working draftswoman sharing the Halowick name. A stir moved through the room. Felicity allowed it to pass. Lady Amabel intended to correct that delay, she said. She died before she did. Her intention matters. So does the harm. The chairman turned toward Anthony. Your Grace, you asked to speak after the technical evidence. Anthony entered the witness space only when invited. My sister feared my judgment because I had given her reason to fear it. After her death, Miss Eldridge asked for access to the workroom. I refused. I accepted an account of sole authorship because it made grief simpler for me. When the full memorandum was recovered, I instructed Mr. Doran to omit its final paragraph from the proposed schedule. The room became still. That instruction was mine. Miss Eldridge rejected it. She was right. I helped make her erasure credible, and I attempted to control the form of its correction. He placed his signed admission before the committee. No right, payment, evidence, or public credit is conditional upon her forgiveness or upon any private relation between us. Randolph gave a short laugh, a polished performance. The chairman looked at him. You will have your opportunity. The third question concerned sabotage. The committee examined the altered demonstration chain with its sixth fold still attached. The crescent side edges had been shaved away, but one partial curved scar remained beneath the binding cord. Vickery compared the paper stock and punch spacing with the rejected card from Randolph's March 28 order. Matthew Crowe confirmed that Price had opened the exhibition cabinet with the proper night duty key. The box lid had remained locked. Tallow had cut the separate side panel seal, drawn one folded section toward the opening, and replaced it without disturbing the lid. The counterfeit seal was placed beside the original sketch. Its copied flaw faced the wrong direction. Samuel Pike entered with Mr. Bell beside him. His voice shook at first, but he did not alter his account. Mr. Tallow took one fold out and put another in. Mr. Kinnerton came through the side passage. He said, "Not before the 5th. The 6th must fail." Randolph rose. "The boy is lying to preserve his wages." Samuel's fingers tightened around his cap. "My place isn't controlled by his grace." Mr. Bell and 2 other masters decided. Tallow's sworn deposition was then read. It named payment through Randolph's secretary and described the substituted fold. The chairman turned to the final question. Eugenia's solicitor argued that she had purchased the fan loop without knowledge of its origin and had been nowhere near the evidence box. "The committee is not asked to place her at the box," Felicity said. "It is asked to determine whether the Kinnerton commercial pattern came from the missing prototype and whether Lady Eugenia attempted to prevent comparison at the memorial." The pavilion attendant testified that Eugenia had asked whether Felicity personally tied the black ribbon to the wreath and had requested a position beside the narrow path leading to the platform. The Bond Street delivery note was shown again. Randolph's solicitor tried to separate the fan from the stolen prototype. Even if the household possessed the ribbon, that does not prove Lady Eugenia knew what it was. Randolph spoke before his counsel could stop him. "She knew only what she was told. My sister has no understanding of cards, repeats, or trade records." Eugenia turned toward him. "You said the strip was Amabel's discarded trial." Randolph's face changed. "I said no such thing. You told me it was too small to matter." The words escaped before she understood what they revealed. Silence struck the room. Felicity did not press immediately. "When did he tell you that?" Eugenia's composure had gone pale and thin. "After Amabel died. He brought me the ribbon. He said the Halewicks would never notice one failed length." Randolph leaned toward her. "Say nothing." Eugenia looked from him to the sealed fan and then to the merchants whose patronage had sustained her position. "At the memorial, I saw the same pattern on the wreath. I asked who had tied it. When the Duke noticed the fan, I tried to pull the wreath ribbon away before anyone could lay them together." Lady Edith drew a quiet breath. "Did you intend the wreath to fall beneath the wheel?" "No." Eugenia's voice broke for the first time. "I intended to remove the ribbon. I didn't intend the rest." "And the public sabotage?" Felicity asked. "Randolph arranged it. I knew he meant to discredit you. I didn't know how." Randolph turned on her. You expect them to believe you were merely vain while I did everything. You expected me to carry your ruin because I carried a title more gracefully than you carried debt. The chairman struck the table once. Enough. The committee withdrew for less than an hour. When its members returned, every person stood. Their finding was read without ornament. Lady Amabel Halewick and Felicity Eldridge were joint designers of the Seven-Willow ribbon. Felicity Eldridge was its technical pattern, draftswoman. The Kinnerton commercial version derived from the first trial prototype. The demonstration of June 20 had been deliberately altered with cards cut from Randolph Kinnerton's duplicate order. Certified findings and sworn depositions would be laid before the magistrate. Civil accounting would proceed separately. Mr. Bell opened his locked folio. The deed and trust instrument took effect before the committee rose. Every Halewick commercial interest vested in the named trustees for Felicity's sole and separate use. Mr. Cresswell approached after the finding. Miss Eldridge, I would like to commission an independent pattern. Write to Eldridge Pattern Rooms when the firm is established, she said. Address the letter to me. By late afternoon, the hall had nearly emptied. Workers gathered papers. The newly woven ribbon remained on the committee loom. Anthony waited near the rear windows until Felicity looked toward him. Only then did he approach. I won't ask you for an answer about the future today, he said, but I need to tell you one truth without attaching it to the finding. Tell me. I love you, Felicity, not the version of you who forgives me, not the woman society might find easier if she softened. I love the whole woman who required me to change when I would have preferred to call remorse enough. The confession entered her more deeply because it asked for nothing. Felicity lifted her hand to his cheek. I love you, Anthony, but you'll court me after justice, not as part of it. His eyes closed for one brief instant against her palm. Yes. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. The choice was hers, and he understood it. His hand settled at her waist only after she leaned into him. The kiss was warm, restrained, and certain. When she drew back, he released her. Felicity returned to the committee table, took up the pen, and signed her full name beneath the technical record. Then she added the name of the firm that did not yet possess walls, but already possessed a future. Eldridge Pattern Rooms. The first contract, signed beneath the brass plate of Eldridge Pattern Rooms, bore Felicity's name before it bore any merchant's approval. It was January 1865, and winterlight entered the two upper chambers in Spitalfields through long northern windows. A narrow loom stood near the far wall. Pattern papers lay in ordered drawers. Hester Knoll arranged working swatches in the new samples archive, while Nell managed appointments at a smaller desk beside the door. Samuel Pike worked under Mr. Bell's eye at the card frame, learning to mark a registration edge without weakening the stock. He received proper wages from the firm's own account. Across the largest table, Mr. Cresswell studied the contract Felicity had placed before him. The draftswoman's fee is paid before the first trial, she said. The balance follows approval of the repeat. Any copying beyond the agreed order requires a separate license. He adjusted his spectacles. Your terms are strict. They're clear. After a moment, he signed. Felicity wrote her full name beneath his and closed the ledger. The act contained no applause, no noble witness, and no borrowed authority. It changed her life more completely than any drawing-room declaration could have done. A letter from Mr. Caleb Doran waited beneath the contract. Felicity opened it only after Mr. Cresswell had gone. The sworn depositions taken through summer and early autumn had been laid before a magistrate. Randolph Kinnerton had been examined and committed for trial. The civil accounting remained separate, as promised. By January, House Kinnerton had surrendered every commercial claim to the Seven-Willow design, delivered an account of profits, and agreed to compensation payable to Felicity's trust. Randolph's later trial ended in conviction for conspiring to obtain trade orders by false pretenses and for bribing an exhibition servant. Lady Eugenia was not imprisoned. Her punishment arrived through the world she had trusted most. Patronage contracts disappeared. Invitations thinned. Before the next London season began, she withdrew to relatives in the north. Felicity folded Doran's letter and placed it in the business archive. Justice had become practical. It paid wages, restored licenses, and prevented the next woman's name from being treated as an inconvenience. Anthony came to the rooms only when invited. During more than 6 months of courtship, he had not introduced merchants without permission, corrected her prices, or placed the Halewick crest above the door. When a newspaper described Eldridge pattern rooms as a ducal enterprise, he sent a correction stating that the firm belonged to Felicity alone. On a cold afternoon near the end of January, he arrived carrying a long parcel wrapped in brown paper. "I have something that belongs here," he said. Felicity looked at the parcel. "That depends upon what it is." 11 of your father's folios. Her breath caught. Anthony placed the parcel upon an empty table, but did not untie it. 3 remained unsold in the dealer's back room. Mr. Doran traced 8 through auction catalogues and later buyers. Every owner agreed to sell. The receipts are inside. You bought them? Yes. For me, without condition. Felicity loosened the string herself. The first leather cover bore Elias Eldridge's faded initials. Inside lay botanical borders in his careful hand, each correction marked with the compressed figures he had taught her to use. She turned one page, then another. You could have presented these before half of London. I considered it. And I remembered that a grand gesture can become another way of deciding what a woman must feel in public. Felicity looked up. That sounds like progress, painfully acquired. He did not smile for long. May I help catalogue them? Yes, sit down. For 2 hours, the Duke of Brantham entered numbers into a plain ledger, while Felicity examined every folio for missing leaves, water damage, and later additions. He did not hurry her grief or praise himself for recovering what his earlier indifference had helped scatter. When the final folio had been entered, evening lay across the work table. Hester, Nell, Samuel, and Mr. Bell had gone. Anthony closed the ledger. There is one more document you must read before I ask you anything. He placed a folded instrument beside the folios. The marriage settlement had been prepared by Doran and reviewed by Felicity's own solicitor. It preserved Eldridge pattern rooms, all profits, contracts, archives, licenses, recovered folios, and future earnings as her separate estate. Anthony held no beneficial interest and no power to direct the trustees. Felicity read every clause. You signed this before speaking to me. Yes, even if I refuse you. Yes, then speak. Anthony placed both hands flat upon the table. I love you. I have loved you through admiration, shame, anger, and the slow understanding that protection without respect is another form of control. His gaze did not leave hers. I am asking whether you will marry me. I am not asking you to close this firm, surrender its name, move its archive, or make your work secondary to mine. Felicity rested one hand upon her father's folio, and when we disagree, you won't be called ungrateful. I won't call command protection. If danger is real, I'll tell you what I see and let Ayuds unless there is no time to ask. And Amabel, we remember all of her courage, her fear, her love, her failure. My name remains on every contract. Yes, the rooms remain mine. Yes, you do not purchase partnership by becoming my husband. No. Only then did he come around the table and lower himself before her. Will you marry me? Felicity touched his cheek, the same place she had touched before their first kiss. Yes, Anthony, I will. They married at the end of February in a small church near Marlowe Chase. Felicity entered as the owner of Eldridge Pattern Rooms and left as the Duchess of Brantham without surrendering either identity. In April, they returned to the Memorial Pavilion. The original wreath had never been restored. Its crushed rosemary and white heather were gone, and the torn black ribbon remained damaged in the legal archive. A new wreath waited beneath Amabel's marble likeness, made from fresh rosemary and white heather, and bound with newly woven Seven-Willow ribbon. The original square-notched card chain had been formally released after the trial and civil inspection. It now belonged to Felicity's professional archive. She mounted it upon the memorial loom herself. Anthony stood beside her, but did not reach for the ebony shuttle in her hand. "Would you like me to hold it?" he asked. "Not yet." Felicity sent the shuttle through the first shed. Black silk crossed silver-gray thread. 7 separate willow trunks appeared, each distinct, each bending toward the others without vanishing into them. She completed the first repeat, then turned and offered him the shuttle. Now, Anthony accepted it carefully. Felicity placed her hand over his and guided the angle. Together, they sent the shuttle across. Lady Edith set the new wreath beneath Amabel's memorial. Along the inner edge of its ribbon, 2 names had been woven where neither fashion nor rank could swallow the other. Amabel Halewick, Felicity Eldridge. Anthony lowered the shuttle only after Felicity did. Their shoulders touched. She slipped her fingers through his. "I love you," he said, "not because you forgave me, because you never allowed love to make truth smaller." Felicity tightened her hand around his. "I love you because you learned that protection must sometimes step back and become respect." Then she rose onto her toes and kissed him. He answered with warmth and restraint, one hand resting lightly at her waist while the other remained joined with hers. Behind them, the loom continued its steady rhythm. The new ribbon lengthened beneath the April light, carrying 2 names forward without repairing the damage that had come before, and without allowing that damage to decide the shape of what came after.